Just talking musicals, musicals with you.
Hello, I'm Lesley Anne Knight and welcome to the Just Talking Musicals meetup, where I get to have a quick catch up with some of today's outstanding theatre professionals from the West End and Broadway. On the other side of the Zoom window today is professional musician Annette Brown. A leading trumpet player in the West End today, a quick scan of Annette's orchestral career to date informs us that she has performed in over 76 countries, played the main stages at Glastonbury, Wembley and Nebworth, toured Australia with Grammy Award-winning singer-songwriter Seal, and played in West End shows such as Chicago, Annie, Sweet Charity, Nativity and City of Angels. Oh yes, and she was such a fabulous guest in season 2. We invited her back to be a guest on today's meetup. It gives me great pleasure to welcome today's guest, Miss Annette Brown.
Hello!
Hello, Nettie B. It's so lovely to
Hello.
see you.
And you too, Lesley.
Thank you for joining me on the meetup today.
Very welcome. Thank you for having me. There's a slight delay, so I'll have to wait till you finish chatting before I butt in.
Oh, we'll get used to it. And I love the fact that you brought your trumpet with you today. Beautiful. Does your trumpet?
It's slightly covered in it's slightly covered in cobwebs, but it's here.
Ah, it's a beauty. Well, the point of the meetup is to ask these 7 questions, and my first question is to everybody: is what were you in the middle of working on when the COVID lockdown took place?
I was working at the Garrick Theatre in London's West End on a fabulous production called City of Angels. Not a musical that I was familiar with before I started doing it, but have thoroughly enjoyed it, and we're all completely gutted. I was actually on the train into Charing Cross when I received a text message to say, you know, the theatre's closed, we're not going ahead this evening. But I was already in town, so I went into the theatre, and we just ran up a massive bar bill. I think it was £3,300.
Was it?
That was just me. No, it wasn't. But we were so sad, and the company from Jamie, the production Jamie, came over to join us, and the producers basically just gave us a blowout night, and just talked about what we might do. You know, gutted, because the show had only been running a short time. We hadn't even had preview night.
It's devastating, isn't it? I've been lucky enough to talk to someone you know, Gareth Valentine and Stephen Mear, who were both working on that same show at that time. Wow! And they've talked about how you just virtually just coming through previews, weren't you? And had you done previews?
We'd done a few previews, and I think it was I can't remember what day it was. I think we were midweek when it closed. And I think the following Tuesday, I may have got my days wrong, but literally a week later was press night. And the previews had gone so well. People were loving it. Sellout nights, you know, the whole thing. Devastating, really.
It was such a shock to everybody to know that. I mean, it's unprecedented in the history of the theatre, quite frankly, isn't it? For a lockdown of all the theatres across the world. Well, everything, really.
Do you know, I have one regret, and that was not to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning and actually go and walk the streets of the West End and just feel the sort of deadness of it, really, because, you know, the West End, of course, is always so vibrant, and the lights and people milling around and chatting and the excitement and the odd little fella drunk in the corner. And I kind of wished that I didn't go and stand on London Bridge or somewhere and actually have a look at London, because I'm sure that it was kind of beautiful but eerie, and you know. Anyway, unlike last night when the pubs opened and Soho was absolutely mobbed.
Which is crazy, isn't it? It makes you wonder why, if you can do that to the bars, why the constant question everybody's been saying, and here we are, you know, and I ought to say the date, it's the beginning of July 2020, and, you know, they have just in the UK announced that restaurants and bars, hospitality can start to open up now. along with airlines, and everybody sits on a plane next to each other wearing a mask, which people in a theatre would do. So why is there this great mystery surrounding theatres and concert venues that people can't go and sit next to each other if they choose to, and if they take all the right precautions? It's beyond me, because people who go visit and love music and love galleries, they are responsible human beings. They know how to be careful.
Well, absolutely. You know, a friend of mine pointed out that gymnasiums are thinking about opening, and you know, people go in, they're sweating, they're breathing all over everybody, and yet you go to a theatre and generally the audiences are sitting there just completely still, and if anybody's got a cough, the first thing they try and do is stifle it.
Yeah.
You know, and it's crazy. I mean, the revenue that is being lost in this country through the theatres closed is just unthinkable, totally unthinkable. And I read somewhere today that they're saying they may not open the theatres till 2021. Well, how many thousands and thousands of people does that leave unemployed? You know, what do we do?
Yeah, which brings me on to we've got the two area questions that I wanted to ask you, apart from the fact that what's happening to City of Angels now, and where does that leave you as a musician and getting back into the production, but also it's that the other question of what should the government be doing. So first of all, let's ask you and come back to funding. What do you think? What do you know at the moment as a musician working in City of Angels? What do you know? What's happening with the production?
With regard to City of Angels, I've no idea, and I think basically the producers, when we first closed, they were brilliant, and they still are brilliant, but they were letting us know week by week, okay, we don't think we'll open until such and such time, such and such time. And of course that goalpost moved and moved and moved. So now I think that they are completely in the dark, and basically they have nothing to tell us. And I know in their hearts that the first thing they want to do is get us back in that theatre and reopen that show.
Yeah.
And I think, because I mean, it would be awesome if we could get back in, because I think we were due to finish in September. I've actually forgotten, it's all become a bit of a blur. But of course, the show that was due to go in after us hasn't been able to prepare. They probably hadn't even cast the company. So, and then there's nowhere for them to rehearse. So there isn't a show ready to go in after us, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
So we could carry on for a couple of months, but of course the producers and the directors are completely in the dark and have got no idea.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, all these theatres are going under. I mean, how can they be funded? You know, people have been slating Cameron McIntosh and saying, oh, you know, he should do this and should do that. But nobody's ever actually thanked him for all the work they've had in the past.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And he built up his company, his empire, and now he's struggling. But all those thousands and thousands of people he's employed, I sort of feel, well, actually, send him a thank you card.
Yeah.
And a McDonald's voucher. No, not a McDonald's voucher, because you know what I mean? It's kind of...
I mean,
so I have no idea what's going to happen.
And here we are, the 6th of July, I believe, today, and we just had this news this morning about the £1.5 billion that the government are announcing that they're going to give to the arts, which strikes me, yes, that's an awful lot of money, but first of all, is it enough? Who's that going to cover? How is it going to be distributed? And how does that compare? Because I know that you've got some facts and figures. How does that compare with the rest of the world and what's been done in other countries?
Well, I've got one here. Excuse me while I just have a little shifty look at my phone. France, for example, have been given 7 billion euros, apparently, and their artists are being paid a wage until 2021.
Which is just what you want to hear, isn't it?
Totally and utterly. You know, how do we survive? There's only so much teaching that you can do.
Yeah.
South Africa, 7 million, Spain, 76 million, Germany, 1 billion. I mean, are these figures correct? Who knows? But they wouldn't be printed if they weren't, I don't suppose. But it's like you said, Lesley, where's that? I mean, the Royal Albert Hall, our most iconic building, already needs between 5 and 10 million to fish it out of going completely bust. But how long will that 5 or 10 million last? You know, that might only keep it afloat for the next 3 months. I don't know how long, but then they'll need another 5 million and another 5 million. And we don't want to lose that building.
No, but
do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but there's all the regional theatre as well, which is
absolutely. There are those I'm in Harrogate now with my mum. Harrogate Theatre is the size of a postage stamp, but it's our iconic, beautiful theatre.
Yeah.
And they're struggling. So every town, every village even, every town, every city has got its own theatre that they need. It's such a, I'm almost speechless with the passion for theatre, because it's such a place where people meet and have fun and, sit and relax and watch the local panto, take their children. I mean, I'd almost, if I could, I had this vision this morning of the whole world for 3 days with no music, no television, no nothing. What a weird place that would be. Music and theatre, TV, all the arts are what keep the world going. You could still play football, but you're not allowed to watch it on your television. Do you see what I mean? It's just...
I do, yeah. Creativity, though, is at the heart of everything. I found a fantastic quote in an academic paper yesterday, because I'm doing a bit of studying at the moment, I read that about Einstein, and that he, over the course of his life, he started playing the violin at the age of 6, and that over the course of his life, he owned 15 violins. He always played the violin to relax, and he called his violin Lena. Every violin was called Lena every time he replaced it. But one of the things, when he was talking about his theory of relativity, the upshot of this article was that for Einstein, his theory of relativity came to him as a result of his love for music, and that he got his inspiration through playing music and through listening to music, and he was a fan of Mozart sonatas. And within this article, they were talking about how he believed that Mozart discovered his sonatas, that they were there in the universe, and Mozart discovered them and then just poured them out, and that he had this views and the correlation of music, creativity and science being one, and there isn't one without the other. And that rang so hard and true for me. And Absolutely. That's what I wish the government could understand, or people in politics could understand, that the arts are so important to everything.
But also, I read this morning, bearing in mind that was very quick, because it's 11 o'clock now, Lesley, in the morning, and I basically didn't get up until an hour ago. So I've sort of quickly read these things that, oh my goodness, I need to get on, But one thing I did see was that they are maybe stopping choirs and bands and brass instruments in schools of children. I think it was between 12 and 14. But what they don't understand is that when you blow a brass instrument, what you hear is a vibration. It's not something I'm spitting out of the end of the instrument. What hits your ear is a vibration. So, and they're talking about wearing masks, and they say, yes, I completely understand, don't share instruments, but generally children don't do that anyway. So my heart sort of says, well, get your facts right before you start to stop children doing things that they love, that's a passion, that's brilliant. Because blowing a trumpet, if you were sitting opposite me, you would hear the vibration you wouldn't get from me personally, if you see what I mean. Yes. So it's kind of, again, it's another scientific thing that should be looked at before you start saying, right, we're not having music in schools,
Oh, it's awful. I mean, as a singing teacher, I've spent the last 3.5 months teaching online, and I thank goodness that we've got the technology. But and it does work, but it is hard, and you can't beat being in person. And I just can't wait for the
Very
day when
hard.
we are all allowed to to meet up in person and practice our craft.
Yeah.
It's got to come. Is there anything though, I suppose, just to bring it a close to this part of our discussion? What is there anything that you think government or others can do to try and get people who work in the theatre back in work, or back on generally the industry back on its feet as we go towards these so-called stages of regenerating it?
Gosh, I suppose the thing is a vaccine, but how soon is that going to appear? But I think for going into the theatre, maybe temperature testing, which is what they were thinking about. You know, I don't know. I wish I did know. I mean, I think Andrew Lloyd Webber, I think, is trying every possible way to find a solution. But of course, I suppose the problem is it's not only getting the audiences in, you can test them at the door kind of thing, but then it's all toilets and this, that and the other. I mean, some of the theatres are quite small. The Garrick, in comparison with other theatres, is quite small. So I suppose there's the whole thing about using the loos, and then the backstage areas are quite small. You know, for us as a band, we were on above the stage on a platform, so we were all quite cosy, actually. We quite enjoyed it, but is that doable? But then if you're tested before you go in the theatre, or if we're all given a home testing kit, and if your temperature goes over a certain, you know, heat, whatever the word is, temperature, then you don't come in. I don't know.
It does make you
But
wonder.
then there's the whole thing of if you've been in proximity, close proximity.
It does make you wonder what they do on airplanes then. There's only one loo.
Totally. Yeah, totally. I hadn't even thought of that, Lesley. Yes.
Let's go outside.
Little door on the wing.
Yeah, and that's what makes it so crazy. That's what makes all of this trying to make there is no logical sense at the moment, is there, in how?
No, and you know, they're starting to play football again.
Yeah.
Well, you know, they're all huffing and puffing, and you can huff and puff on a football pitch, but you can't sing in a choir.
Or in a singing lesson.
Or in a singing lesson, you know. Anyway,
yeah, well.
But the thing is, the trouble is as well, some of us behave sensibly, and others of us go and mob in Soho.
Yeah.
You know, or at all the pubs and things, and you just think, I don't know.
This is the thing, at this point in time, none of us have got a crystal ball. We will look back on this, hopefully, in time to come and go, yeah, that's where we were. Thank goodness we're where we are now. And I just hope that we will, you know, it will pick up. Broadway's going to be opening at the beginning of next year, and they've actually said they're going to they've actually stated, the American Theatre League have stated that the process of how that's going to work. And I think if only the UK, maybe now they've got some sense of funding, they might be able to actually start talking about when theatre will open.
Well, so, David Ian has announced that he will tour Chicago next year as from March, you know, yeah. And I think it's a hugely brave and actually quite wonderful prospect of the fact that something may actually start, yes. You know, in 8 months' time. And 8 months seems an awful long time away, but we've already done 4 months, if you see what I mean.
Yes.
So for me, knowing that actually somebody's, come on, let's get in there, is really quite encouraging. And I hope for David that everything has calmed down and it just, you know, swimmingly goes as all his tours do.
Well, as you quite rightly pointed out, it's all really genuinely about a vaccine, and we know, we hear that there is hope for a vaccine, if not this year, early next year. And as you say, having lived through nearly 4 months of it now, we're kind of all managing somehow to get through it. And you can imagine, okay, I just need to get to the beginning of next year, then we can in our heads write this year off.
Yeah.
Somehow try and recover economically. somehow.
Yes, absolutely. Well, that'll be the next thing. Because the thing is, of course, if the theatres do open, can people afford to go?
Yeah.
I mean, hopefully they can, because I suppose there's the advantage of lockdown that you can't go out and spend your money on coffees and whatever people buy. But then if people have been out of work for so long, can they actually afford to go to the theatre? You would hope that, it's okay.
It's plain that there are people that won't be able to, and that's tragic. But if you look at history, when you look at, for instance, Broadway, during the 1930s, during the era of the Great Depression, I've always been amazed at how they managed to put shows on between 1929 and 1939, 1940. And even during the war years, how on earth, during times of absolute economic crisis, there were some terrific shows that actually went on Broadway that sellout shows, like Anything Goes. Right in the middle of all of that, and that was just to cheer everybody up. And it was alive. It did stay alive, and somehow, with the will of the people, something, maybe theatre won't be quite as expensive to go to. I don't know how it will work. But talking about theatre, obviously, that brings me to ask you a question, number 4 question on the meetup, which is, what's your favourite show of all time, Annette Brown?
I'm going to pretend that my computer's frozen just for one moment.
I knew you were doing that.
Okay, I have to give you an answer that, because ordinarily I would choose a show that I enjoy playing rather than what the show might be, if that makes any sense. So, and also when I go to see, for example, West Side Story, I love it with a passion. But I love the trumpet parts. So sometimes I actually forget what's going on stage because I'm listening to the trumpets, because I know what's coming and I'm thinking, oh, there's a pearly bit, are they going to nail it, kind of thing, which is, a bit cheeky, but I love it. But I think in my heart, my favourite show is one that I saw when in Harrogate at the Royal Hall, which is a place that is so dear to me. I've done so many, it chokes me up just thinking about it. And I saw a show there when I was 9 years old. It was an amateur amateur production, but my 2 brothers were in it and my gran was in it.
Oh, wow.
And that production was the first thing I'd ever seen, I think, and it was Oliver.
How old were you then?
I think I was about 8 or 9, maybe even younger. But I walked into the theatre, and I can't tell you what I had for breakfast yesterday, but I can tell you what I was wearing on that day, where I was sitting, and the fact that my gran used to always, she was 4 foot tall and 4 foot wide, and she used to always push herself to the front of the stage wherever she was, whatever scene. My gran was there was one bit, she was in one show, and the leading lady and the leading man, it was something like My Fair Lady, were doing this beautiful waltz, and my gran walks across in front of them. I digress. So, but I can remember the smell of the theatre, and I was allowed to go backstage afterwards, and was a little bit disappointed because I thought that the dressing rooms would be all glamorous and, velvet seats and chandeliers and there's paint hanging off the wall and everybody's crammed into a little room. But it really set a fire in my heart for theatre, and the production was Oliver. So I think that's got to be my favourite. Plus, it's a great show.
Yeah.
But for me, the memories really fired a passion for theatre. And I saw the band. There's all these old guys in the pit just sort of blowing away, and I thought, I want to do that. I want to be in that pit, and of course, eventually, I was. Yeah.
But knowing from our interview that we did on for season 2, you were already playing the cornet, weren't you?
Yes, I was. So even more that I wanted to be in that pit playing.
Yeah. And
yes,
it was a different kind of playing, wasn't it? Because you were playing brass band.
I was indeed. Yes.
And then you go and see this other kind of wonderful thing where you can't even see the band, presumably in the Royal Hall. And the magic of
Well, I could see the tops of their heads,
yeah,
because the band was sort of auditorium level with just I remember it, a red velvet curtain around them on gold poles around the band. So where I was seating, I was looking down, and I was on the front row,
yeah,
wearing a little red and yellow velvet dress, and my gran had bought me some foil covered chocolate eggs, and they were green, yellow, silver and blue. I can remember it so vividly, and the lady wanted to get past, and I stood up to let her pass, and all my eggs spilled onto the floor, so to speak. But that's how much it grabbed me. Do you know what I mean? That I can remember the details intricately. And as I say, ask me what I had for breakfast yesterday. Not a clue.
oh, what a wonderful memory. And the last thing I expected you to say, obviously, but I thought it's that special. It's that special moment in theatre, isn't it, that just gets you and has.
Because I sort of question myself sometimes. If I hadn't been to see that production, would I be as interested in theatre as I am now? Do you know what I mean? I suppose it's like having your first ever chocolate bar or something. If you'd never had one, would you be that bothered? I mean, that's a terrible analogy, but
it is
I can smell the theatre. I can remember, and the thing is as well, prior to that, my mum was making my brothers costumes, so there's raggedy bits of cloth all over the house, and she made my brother this hat, and he was chuffed to bits because it was the best hat on the stage. And my mum, who was a bit handy with the old needle, had made this hat for him, and I can remember it was kind of a gold velvety thing with a little tassel on the top, and then we made it look a bit more grubby, but he was the cat that got the cream with his hat. And it was just, the whole thing was just lovely. And then, as I say, my gran waddling on and still in the limelight.
You see,
so, yeah.
It's this whole thing about this connection, isn't it? It's your family that drew you into theatre, and it's your family that drew you into music. And there's an interesting story that Stephen sometimes tells about he has said in the past, if it wasn't for the fact that a friend of his that lived up the road was Jamie Hammerstein, and his dad was Oscar Hammerstein, and so Stephen Sondheim used to go and hang out at the Hammerstein's place, and Hammerstein became quite an influence on his life, and he looked up to him as a surrogate father, and he has said that if Hammerstein had been an architect or a civil engineer or something like that, maybe that's what he would have become. But it was
he would have done, yeah.
He worked in the theatre that he was very drawn to it because he was so influenced by what Hammerstein did for a living, and he wanted to learn about it because of that. And I suppose that's how we get drawn in, isn't it?
Yeah, because interestingly, talking now, my father used to play tuba in the local brass band, and I don't actually know how he came to be a tuba player. And that's shocking, really. I don't know my dad's background to being a musician, because no one else in the family is. I mean, my brothers were choir boys, so they ended up doing this production. But my mum was a ballet dancer, which is another avenue I stuck my toe into. And actually, as a young girl, I was very good. I was having lessons for the Royal Ballet School, but then I found beer and chips and it went out the window.
I didn't know that. You had lessons at the Royal Ballet School?
I was training for the Royal Ballet School. I got distinction in my exams.
What?
And was really quite good at the old ballet.
You always had
but well, yes, I'll give you a pirouette later, darling. But there came a junction where I kind of had to make a choice between ballet or playing the cornet, as was then. I chose the cornet.
You'll find that there will be somebody else in your family that influenced your dad. I found out in last few years that we had having thought that I was the black sheep of the family, in my family being the only person that was really crazy about musicals and music and singing, apart from my aunt. Actually, I do know my aunt has always loved singing, but I found out that I have, I think, a great aunt Elsie who was a singer, and she used to be in entertainment, and one of my great uncles was a member of the Magic Circle. And I found my brother found a program that they were in, and that was in the early 1900s. And you think, I had no idea. So it's all there.
Yeah, I should trace Dad actually, but I know that Mum's auntie was a dancing teacher and a very good one. So my mum did dance. Oh, I'm going a little bit. I'm forgetting my roots. I'm a Yorkshire lass. My mum did dance. Yeah, interesting. I should look into that really. I'll ask Mum. Yeah. It's shocking that I've never really asked.
Well, it's talking about ended up. That highlights it, isn't it?
Yeah, totally.
So, talking about yesterday and today, who's your favourite artist, performing artist of all time from yesterday and today?
I'm just going to do that freeze frame thing again. I think from the past it's got to be Frank Sinatra. Why? Just iconic. Because his voice just melts me. And there's no one sings, and no one ever has, and no one ever will sings like him. But also his band and all that backing and the whole package is just, wow, brilliant.
Yeah.
But as an artist for now, I think for influencing all musicians, there's an Australian guy called James Morrison. And he's the most phenomenal trumpet player. So I'm not going artist as in, singer or whatever. I'm going trumpet player because he's just so inspirational. But not only does he play wicked trumpet that you just jaw drop, he plays wicked trombone, he plays wicked saxophone, he can play anything, and I mean anything. So for musicians, anybody watching this who's thinking about anything or needs a bit of inspiration, YouTube James Morrison, and he's just out of this world, and such a lovely man too.
And how did you come across him?
Just really Googling trumpet players, and then chatting with my mates and like, have you heard the bit of James and da da da. Yeah, just I have nights when I can't sleep. I've been quite poorly over the year. I was diagnosed with cancer, it's 11 years ago now, and it's been quite a struggle, and there have been many nights when I've been in bed and can't sleep and da 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 da. And so to take my mind off things, I'll Google on these wonderful things we've got these days, and I've come across some incredible people that I'd not heard of, and just lie in bed and watch them, and before you know it 2 hours has gone by and you think, oh, I want to get up and try and do what he's done, and just really inspirational. There's so many things like that you can find these days.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's phenomenal. And I know it's not a sort of a singer that you might want me to have mentioned, or he's just a phenomenal musician that's inspirational,
Which is quite right coming from your perspective. But one day,
yeah.
on the spot though, in the shows that you've been in, or in the shows that you've seen, if there's one person, I don't know, when you've been on stage or when you've been playing and someone comes on stage, has there ever been anyone where you've gone, oh, wow? I suppose actually everyone, apart from you.
Me. Oh, Les, what a question.
That puts you on the spot, doesn't it?
Totally on the spot. I'll think about that one.
We'll come back.
Because and the reason I'm stalling is because different people give me fire me up in different ways, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
There may be there is someone who came on and sang, and I thought, oh, but then I watched them act and it was like, oh my goodness. And I'm not going to say who it is because that would be awful. And it works the other way too.
Yeah.
So some people might come on and just, do you know who really warmed my heart was Bernie Nolan. She was just phenomenal night after night after night, and then sang her heart out.
Talk about Bernie Nolan, for people who don't know about Bernie and her sisters, what was she first famous for?
Well, she was famous for singing with the Nolan sisters, wasn't she?
Yeah.
And I think for me, Bernie was the voice of the Nolan sisters. And they toured the world with their dad and were very famous and successful. And then sadly, Bernie, we were at the same time having chemo, and Bernie isn't with us anymore, and it breaks my heart. But do you know something? Every night she came to work and sat with the musical director and was trying to sing, and her voice was all damaged, and she wanted every night to sing. And we were sharing digs, and I was saying to her, "Go home, Bernie, you know, no, tomorrow I'll be fine, I'm going to go on tomorrow." And she just stayed with us for as long as she possibly could, but eventually just had to go home because it wasn't going to get any better. And it's heartbreaking, but her determination and her professionalism were just, people should take a leaf, really. Anyway.
No, but actually I'm pleased you talked about her, because I know how close to your heart she is, and I think that this represented for me a wonderful tribute to her, because she was such a professional, wasn't she? Gone too soon, and a wonderful lady, and really talented.
Yeah, absolutely.
And she had a great voice. She had all of it, and she was a good
Yeah.
woman. And I think saluting these people and taking a moment to go, she turned up no matter what, didn't she? It was amazing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh.
Daily, just desperate to get back on and do what she loved.
Yeah.
In fact, it was the anniversary of her death a couple of days ago. Poor lass.
Moving on.
Right.
Moving on.
Yes.
To another.
Love you, Bernie.
Might well put you on the spot. Broadway or West End? Have you done?
I'm doing the freezy thing again. I'm trying to give myself time to think. Do you know what? West End.
Yeah.
Because when I think of the size of the United States of America and the choice that they have of actors, technicians, wiggies, makeup, theatre designers, and then you look at London or look at England and the size of, get a Russian doll in America and plop England inside it. We're probably the little tiny doll that you get right at the end. But the productions that we produce, amazing.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And in fact, I saw Wicked on Broadway and I saw Wicked in London, and I thought the London production was better. So yeah, I think I'm really, really proud of London's West End and the things that it produces. And it's wonderful that things come from Broadway to West End. It's the first of all the countries in the world. I think a lot of things come to London first, which I think is a huge compliment to us and our artists and our theatres, really.
There's always been a crossover, hasn't there? Since the 20th century, it's always been that. I mean, in the old days, what Broadway was doing was nicking some of the stuff from London, and Gilbert and Sullivan, they nicked some of their works and just produced their own version. So then Gilbert and Sullivan would take their operettas over there, and it's always
kind of like a little game of tennis, isn't it? Batting the shows from one country to the other across the pond.
For me, though, Broadway really, really created what we know as the musical theatre today. But the fact is, yes, that's a fact. But the West End has something else, doesn't it? And it can't be denied. It has its tradition of, alongside musical theatre, it has the long-standing tradition, which is much older than the United States has, as hundreds of years of theatrical history.
Yeah. And I think also as well, going back to my little Oliver production, when I started doing Amdram productions in Harrogate, my dream was to have my own show in the West End. And so I kind of feel I have to give a loyalty to my own country and to London because I really have had a wonderful time, playing in the West End. It's awesome.
And I know that you, we've talked about this before, that you love going, when you're in a show, you love getting to the theatre early and you go and sort of, you pace about your territory, because it's just, I think it's such a privilege, not that I've done it very often, it's such a privilege to walk through the stage door of a theatre. I can't.
Lesley, I love it. And also the other thing, quite interestingly, well, I think so, with the lockdown, I've done lots and lots of these online playing, you know, you sent the music, you record it in your own home, and then some clever person puts it all together and creates these great videos. And recently there was one, I got a random email via a friend of mine for the World Jazz Band or something, and I recorded this thing, and then next minute the whole band is made of people from all over the world. I mean, that's fantastic, because no way would anybody have thought about doing that really unless it was lockdown. But so another friend of mine has put one together, and he wanted to have some well-known artists included. And I said, oh, well, I'm in touch with such and such and such and such and such and such and such, and lifted off this whole list of names. And he was like, my goodness, Nettie, how come you speak to all these people? And I said, well, I go into the theatre early, and they're always in early to do vocal warm-up and physical warm-up. And I chat to them. And then next thing, you're having a pint in the bar.
Yeah.
And next thing, oh, Nettie, we're having a barbecue. Do you want to pop round? And so I've got these names, and he was like, oh my God, actually, I wished I'd take more of an effort to speak to people. But that's me, that's my nature. I'm a bit of a, you know, I love to chat with people. So,
But not only that, you also like to soak up the atmosphere of the backstage, don't you? The history.
Yeah,
the smell.
yeah, I do. Yeah. People think I'm bonkers when I say that theatres smell.
Oh, I don't. I understand it. I love it.
But it's the smell of the seats in the auditorium. It's the smell of somebody's just repainted the set. The smell of the other thing I love as well that really brings back memories is my gran used to have this great big pot of really thick foundation, which I got hold of one day and made myself look. Another story for another time. But the smell of the makeup. And then you walk down a corridor and I can smell that somebody's been ironing some of the costumes. You know, it's just sort of walk around blindfolded and guess which room you're in, you know.
And the dust. I like the smell of the dust backstage.
The dust, yeah. All that dust coming from the lights you can, when I'm on stage sometimes, you can see it in the spotlights floating down, you know.
Oh.
Love it.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Right, Miss Annette Brown.
Next question
on the meetup is,
hang on.
Oh no. If you were to write a book about your life up to now, what would the title of that book be? And what would your favourite chapter be? Stuff it.
Do you know, this is really quite pleasant, Reza, because I don't have, I call my friend Lesley Reza, by the way. I don't have to even do my pose to think about this one, because, as I briefly mentioned earlier, I was very poorly 10 years ago with cancer. And it was very hit and miss, let's say. And I'm pleased to say that I'm doing very well. I'm on chemo as we speak. But anyway, another story. However, I did, in one of my days of woe, decide that I would write a book. And I've actually started it. About my life, and it isn't, I mean, on my vision board it's a bestseller, and they're talking about it on Richard and Judy, if they still exist, but I would love to write it for my friends and family to read, and the title would be An Elephant Took My Shoe.
Okay. And
the best chapter would be when I was age 6, because everything that's happened in my life that's put me on a pathway to where I am now started when I was 6 years old. And I'll tell you briefly, my love of animals comes because on my 6th birthday, my mum spent 25 pence. And in the days when you could buy cats and puppies from a pet shop, she was walking home from work. It was my birthday. There was a grey kitten in a box outside a pet shop, and she bought it. 25p, and with that we got quite a lot of free fleas. Bargain. And that kitten, I named him Tom from The Aristocats, which was my favourite film at the time. And I had Tom for 21 years, and he slept on my bed every night.
Wow.
And he used to snuggle up and curl around me, and we were just inseparable. And so my love of animals. Then I was 6 years old when my dad took me to my first band practice in Knaresborough, a couple of miles from Harrogate, down the road. He used to go on the back of his Honda 50 motorbike, no helmet. Health and safety would go bananas now. And the band wanted to give people, players in the band, their children, the chance to learn. He took me at age 6, gave me a cornet, off we go. And also when I was 6, we went to a zoo, and there was a baby elephant, and there was a brick wall and then some railings, and I couldn't see this elephant. And my mum lifted me up, and I was wearing a brand new pair of little red sandals, and the baby elephant stuck his trunk through the bars, took my shoe, and starts hoofing on and I was giggling, and all the people, oh shit, and I'm like, I like it. And as it happened, the keeper was walking past, and he just walked in, and he tapped him on his head, and he went, spat out my shoe, and gave it back to my mum, covered in saliva and and I was like, yay, got my shoe, put it straight on my foot, this manky wet. But from there, I have a huge passion for elephants. Everything happened in my 6th year, so that would be my favourite chapter.
Oh, wow.
Without a doubt.
That Naughty Elephant. What a brilliant title for a book.
Yeah, I thought so too.
And the best chapter. And isn't it incredible that something that series of events that happened to you when you were just 6 years old? Yeah.
And so memorable.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be, I must check with my mum actually, because it could be that when I saw Oliver, it may well have been in that year. I was young. Maybe 9's too old.
But it's
actually, it could be 6, because my brother, that would make my brother 10. So anyway, I'll check with mum, but nevertheless, yeah, definitely my 6th year. I'd love to go back and I'd love to go back and do it again. If I could go back for one day in my life, it would be, or 1 year in my life, it would be my 6th year, because it was so exciting. Of course, I had no idea at the time.
No.
But and this little kitten, and it was in the days when we used to have power cuts, and I can remember we'd had a power cut, and we were in the sitting room with the fire burning, as in coal fire, because with no central heating, and candles burning. And I remember sitting with this kitten and my mum and dad choosing a name.
Just terrific.
21 years I had him.
I know, that's outstanding as well.
And he died in my arms.
Oh, heartbreak. Don't want sad endings.
No, but I mean, it is a sad ending, but he was a lovely boy and he'd had a good life.
Yeah. And so many wonderful things influenced you in that time. And Nettie B, this has been yet another wonderful conversation that we've had today. And I knew it would be good, and it's been wonderful to talk to you. I thank you so much for doing today.
Thank you.
And for bringing the trumpet with you, because it's so beautiful, and I can't wait. And I know you can play it an awfully loads better than that, but it's just how to get a great sound from it. I can't wait to come see you play in City of Angels. I can't wait to see you live performance again in the near future. Thank you for chatting to me on the meetup today. It's been absolutely splendid.
Thank you, Reza. Loads of love.
Lots of love, and thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye,
you.
Brown.
Bye.
Bye.
Just talking musicals with you.